Welcome to Superhuman Selling. I am so glad that you are joining me today. And today we're talking about how to trust yourself again and why it matters for quantum leaping. So, little known fact, except for our community, the core message of She Sells in the Superhuman Selling community is actually to trust yourself. And what I have found is that for women and men in our community, one of the biggest hidden keys to creating your own quantum leap, whether you want to turn your annual income into your monthly income, maybe you want to launch a new business, you want to go buy multiple homes, you want to 10x your revenue this year, it is to trust yourself. Self-trust is everything. And today we're going to talk about, number one, why it matters to your quantum leap. Number two, how do we stop trusting ourselves along the way? I've had a journey there. A lot of members of our community have as well. And then I'm going to give you 6 keys to regain your self-trust if you feel like you've lost it. So let's talk first about why self-trust matters for your quantum leap. So here's what I want you to think about. This has been something in my own life, and this is something that I've seen in so many members of our community as well. You have something greater in your heart that you want to do than you're doing right now, I'm sure. Or maybe you had a time in your life where life was good. Maybe you checked a lot of boxes. That was my life about, 10, 15 years ago, where I had climbed the corporate ladder. I had checked the boxes. I had the 6-figure corporate job. I had done the things that I thought I was supposed to do to be happy and successful. And yet, I felt like there was something so much more that I was supposed to be doing. And I didn't want to hear that voice inside of me for so long telling me that there was something more. And I think that you may be able to relate to that still small voice that won't go away. Maybe it's telling you it's time to leave your job. Maybe it's telling you it's time to launch that business. Maybe it's telling you it's time to write that book, to pitch yourself for those stages, to really go for it in a greater way. But if you don't trust yourself, then the world is going to drown out that voice. And here's something that I know in my own journey of having been stuck at the same level of income for over 10 years and 10xing in 6 weeks when I discovered the method that we now teach within our community, the 4 quadrants of quantum sales growth, is that your quantum leap, it's never going to be logical. It's never going to make sense on the front end. If you were to go talk to someone, I remember when I had the first inclinations and nudges of it's time to really get uncomfortable. It's time to invest in myself. I was tired of being stuck at the same level of income for over 10 years, which for me was low 6 figures. I wanted the life on my vision board, and I felt called to invest half of the money I had made the year before in coaching and mentoring to work with someone to help me ascend. I didn't have that money sitting around. It didn't make sense on paper. If I spoke to probably 99% of my network about that, they would have said, "You're crazy. It's a terrible idea." But that still small voice inside of me kept saying, "You have to do this." Now, Steve Jobs said it brilliantly. He said, "You'll never connect the dots looking forwards. It'll always be looking backwards." And that's the crazy thing about quantum leaping. That's the crazy thing about self-trust, is that when you feel nudged to do something, maybe it's to invest in yourself in a deeper way again, maybe it's to go start your business, maybe it's to pitch yourself for a TEDx stage. On the front end, it's not necessarily going to make sense. It may not make sense financially, on paper, logically, but there's something inside of you that says, go for it. That is the power of self-trust, because that voice will always, always, always guide you in the right direction. But it's going to require you to overcome fear. It's going to require you to get usually radically uncomfortable. And it's going to require you to become a new version of yourself as well. Let's talk about why we lose self-trust. I think about, as I record this, I've got 3 kids, 5 and under, and they run at life in the most beautiful way. And if you're listening to this or watching this and you're a parent, you probably know what I'm talking about if you also have young kids, where they're bulldozing through life. They see something they want to jump off of. They're like, "I'm jumping. I'm not going to stop and hesitate. I'm just going for it." They say what they want. They're verbal. They're loud, like all of it. And it's so beautiful. And so, of course, I get to teach them manners and how to harness that energy, but they have the most inherent self-trust. I think all of us are born to some degree with that, but over time we lose it. And that can come from a lot of different places. I'm a woman who struggled with an eating disorder for almost 20 years. And that was because I had stopped listening to myself. And I always think, as a parent now, I know that I always do my very best as a parent, but I also know there's things that I say or things that I've done where my kids are going to have some limiting beliefs or some things that they get to overcome or grow through later. And for myself, the environment I grew up in, certain things happen where I stopped trusting myself over time. And that actually creates that disconnection between the mind and the body. And if you're listening to this and maybe you've struggled with an eating disorder or anxiety or something like that, then you've maybe had a moment where you realized you didn't feel like you could trust yourself anymore. I work with a lot of members of our community who maybe went through sexual assault or rape or something like that. I had that background as well. And if you have something like that happen, we tend to move from our body up into our head and live, as my friend Michelle Chalfant, who's the creator of the adult chair method, says, live from the neck up. So I only feel safe here. And we stop paying attention to our bodies. These things can be passed on too, or taught over time. My mom shared this with me years ago, that she stopped trusting herself and didn't feel safe in her body from an early age. I remember, and this may be a little heavy, but it's something a lot of people can relate to, when we miscarried our first baby. I remember leading up to that moment, I was worried and I was feeling unsafe in my body, and like I didn't trust my body to be able to actually have a baby. And so I'm not trying to assign any meaning to that, but what I'm saying is that when we have trauma, when we have things that happen that have us feel unsafe in our body, we stop feeling safe here and we go live up here. And so if you have disconnected from your body, if you've stopped trusting yourself, there are ways you can get that self-trust back. This is the good news. I think, none of us makes it through life without having a trauma, a challenge, something. I think that's really a big part of life, is learning, who do I get to become as I overcome these experiences? And they always end up being gifts in the end. But at the same time, it's a journey to learn how to trust yourself again. And so I want to share with you today 6 keys to regaining self-trust. And these were the things that I really did when I got to a point in my life where I realized I didn't trust myself anymore. I was living from the neck up. I didn't feel like I could listen to my body or listen deeply to myself. And it was a journey and a process. But what I've learned is that every time you trust yourself, it works out. And if you've ever trusted yourself and you felt like, well, that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, it just hasn't completed yet. You haven't seen the full picture yet of what's going to happen. And so the first is, this is something I want you to really think about. How often are you looking to other people for advice, to tell you what to do? There's a concept that we teach in our community, and this is something I talk about on stages too, called creating your personal board of advisors. Here's what I want you to think about. Who are you getting advice from? And do they have the results that you want? Are they living the type of life that you actually want? I see this happen all the time. Someone wants to come in and invest in our programs or invest in coaching or the community, and they say, okay, I know I want to do it, but you know what I'm going to say next? I need to talk to my husband. I need to talk to my spouse. I need to talk to my sister. I need to talk to my best friend. Now, I'm not saying to not let people know what you're doing, but at the same time, so often we ask others almost energetically for permission, or we use, I need to ask someone else, as a shield from actually feeling confident to make a decision ourselves. We hide behind other people and say, well, I can't do this because my husband said this, my wife said this, my partner said this. So again, I'm not telling you to not have partnerships. I'm not telling you to not run things by people who matter to you. But at the same time, the person who you ask for advice is only going to be able to come to you from their level of consciousness and their level of awareness. And so I think this is part of why it is so critically important to have coaches, mentors in your life. These can be people you know that you pay. Maybe you're in our community, maybe you're in someone else's. They can be living, they can be dead, right? We'll talk about the board of advisors in a minute. But people who you can look to say, how would you think about this? How would you think about it? How would you invest in yourself? What would you say? What would you do? If you want to become a multimillionaire and you feel called to go do something, to invest in a program, to launch a business, and you go ask your broke sister, no offense to your broke sister, but you go ask her, well, what do you think about this? Should I go do this? What is she going to say? She's going to tell you no. She's going to say, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. No, you shouldn't do it. No, you shouldn't go for it. But what do her results tell you about her level of thinking and her level of awareness? Again, this is no judgment on anyone, but it is telling you to be conscious of who you go to for advice. So I am really big on listening to yourself, listening to your own intuition, listening to your own guidance. But if you're going to ask for advice and guidance, always look at the life of the person who you're going to, because that's going to tell you how their level of thinking is impacting their results. If you want to know their thinking, you want to make sure first, do they have the results I want to experience in my life? So when you create your board of advisors, what I advise my clients to do is make a list of people, I would say anywhere from 3 to maybe 8. They can be living, they can be dead. Mine are, I kind of joke about this, a good number of mine are like old dead white dudes. I love them. I've got my Napoleon Hill, I've got Bob Proctor, I've got Wayne Dyer, I've got some other people on there, Oprah's on there. I love my board of advisors. So I've got some living, some dead. But these are people where I admire how they lived. I think that they were good people inside and out, and I want the level of results that they had as well. And when you're faced with a decision or when you're faced with a choice, you can ask yourself, well, how do I think so-and-so would think about this? How would Napoleon Hill think about this? How would Wayne Dyer think about this? How would Oprah think about this? Some of these people, again, you may be able to pay to get in their sphere and their energy. Do it if you can. It's worth it. It's going to quantum leap your results. It's going to shortcut the amount of time that it takes you to get where you want to go. But if they're dead, you can think about it and say, well, how would Bob Proctor talk about this again? He would tell me to go for it. He would tell me to think bigger. He would tell me I'm thinking too small. That is how you can energetically get in someone else's head, and it'll give you a totally different frame of reference. Something that you may have hesitated on, suddenly you'll say, I feel empowered to do it. I'm going to trust myself to go for it, right? So that board of advisors, that's number 1. Number 2, we had a beautiful guest mentor in our community, in my mastermind, the 50K Club, named Toni Jones. She's also performed at and spoken at one of my events before, and she's been on the podcast as well. She is an affirmation musician, and she's amazing. So go check out her work, and I'll have my team link the episode where she came on here in the show notes as well, because it was a powerful episode. But one of the things that she spoke about to our community when she came and spoke is this concept of checking your receipts. So I alluded to this earlier, but I want you to think about every time in your life when you trusted yourself. Didn't it turn out? Didn't it turn out? And again, if it hasn't fully turned out yet, then you're still in the middle of it, and that's okay, but it's going to turn out. Check your receipts. Keep an evidence journal. Keep a log, keep a notebook of, I trusted myself and I went for it. Maybe you moved across country because you felt like you needed to and it made no sense. Maybe you left a relationship that was draining you and you were so scared to leave that person, but you know what? It opened up the path where you met your soulmate, your life partner. Maybe you went for it, you launched that business. Maybe it didn't go the way you thought it was going to go, but you met someone along the way. You developed a new business partnership and it became the thing that you were actually looking for. So I want you to check your receipts and start keeping evidence of every single time I trust myself, this works out. This happens for me. All right, your remaining 4, we have a self-trust audit for you. This is really fun. So I want to share this. I want you to start asking yourself the question and start living this way. Where in my life do I already know the answer? Where do I already know the answer? A question I ask myself all the time. And this can feel, I don't want to say hard, but it'll cut to the truth for you really quick. What is my knowing? Any situation where you're faced with something that feels like a crossroads or an uncertainty, or where maybe the old version of you would have shrank or wouldn't have taken action if you stop and you say, what is my knowing? And you listen. You're gonna know. You already know. Intuition is quiet. Fear is loud. Okay. The other thing that I'll do, and this is kind of a sub-bullet point under that, but any decision that you have, take time out of it and take money out of it. What do? That's your truth. You can always figure out the money. You always figure out the time. All right. I'm big believers. Those are just resources. Make them work for you. But if you take time and money out of it, what would you do? That is your knowing and that is your truth. And that's going to help you cut through the noise. Number 2, whose permission am I waiting for? Whose permission am I waiting for? This is big. We wrote a book collectively as a community, and I want you to go check it out and buy it on Amazon, called Permission to be Powerful. And I actually share the story in there about my first quantum leap experience and making that investment in myself when I had no evidence that it was going to work. And I was the breadwinner in my family, and I thought that I was going to put my family in financial jeopardy. And I had so much doubt at the time, but I still had this self-knowing of, I need to do this. I need to take this action. So whose permission are you waiting for? Everything in your life will change when you realize no one is going to come give you permission. No one is going to come tell you that it's time. No one is going to tell you that you're good enough, that you're worthy. These are things that come after the fact. These are things that you have to give yourself. So we can be waiting for permission, even unconsciously. I think a lot of this probably comes from childhood, where we learn you've got to wait and stop and ask for permission. But then as an adult, we don't realize, I'm waiting for permission to go buy that car. I'm waiting for permission to go invest in myself. From whom? I call it putting your life on layaway. When you realize that you want something deeply within you, but you're not taking action on it because subconsciously you're waiting to go for it. You're waiting for someone to come say, yes, do it. It's going to work out. That's never going to happen. So you have to start saying again, if I trusted my knowing, if I gave myself permission to really trust myself, what would I do? That's going to be your truth. The third of the self-trust audit, and this is also number 5 in the list of 6 for those who are tracking and paying attention. Hopefully that's not too confusing. What have I been repeatedly telling myself that I keep ignoring? What have I been repeatedly telling myself that I keep ignoring? This is kind of one of those things where we can say, you got to take your own advice. So do you find yourself maybe counseling other people on navigating a relationship or a business issue, but you're not actually doing it? I have a great client. I love this woman. She's in financial services. And I think that we are all in industries or businesses where we get to grow and learn ourselves, right? Like I teach this because I'm always learning this. I haven't mastered it. I'm always practicing it and learning it myself. I want to learn along with you and share with you what I learn. But I have a client in financial services, and she came to me not too long ago and she was like, Elyse, I don't feel confident in my own finances. And it was such a beautiful moment because she acknowledged, and she's doing, by most people's standards, she's doing great. And she's an expert. She really is an expert in her space. But she realized there were areas where she had been avoidant, not looking at things, not wanting to really take her own advice. And it was this beautiful moment of empowerment for her to say, you know what? I'm going to listen more deeply to myself. I'm going to start treating myself as my own best client. And I'm going to pour into myself the way that I would do to others. So if you're repeatedly giving other people advice, maybe you're the person in your community who people go to help them out, to be the advice giver, but you don't do the same thing for yourself. Why are you not worthy to follow your own advice? Why are you not worthy to have the amazing relationship, the abundant business, the fantastic health, right? So just notice, what are you repeatedly telling others or yourself that you keep ignoring? That's going to chip away at your self-trust. When you start listening to that and taking action towards it, then you're going to find a very different level. You'll create a different level of self-trust within yourself. And the final thing, this is number 6, all right? I want you to ask, what is one promise that I can make myself today and actually keep? I recently, I kind of go through phases with this in my life where I'm like really tracking habits and tracking a lot of stuff. And then I won't do it for a while because I feel like I get in a groove and it kind of becomes part of who I am. But recently, I really looked at, for a woman who's where I'm going, which is a woman who has an 8-figure business, 3 kids, maybe more down the road, who knows, but 3 right now, who's successful, who's happy, who's in love with herself and with life, who's healthier than ever, who's more vibrant than ever. How does she treat herself? What are her habits? And I looked at all areas of life: business, financial, health, relationships, how I am with my kids, how much time I have with them. And I thought, what are the core habits and routines that she has every single day and every single week that help support her in that? And I wrote them down, and they were different than what I was doing at the time. And some of them were stretchy, some of them weren't. But things like, she has a smoothie like 4 days a week. She has, quality special time with her kids, this amount throughout the week. She's saving and investing this much money every week. She's pitching herself for this many stages every week. Like, what are the core things that really move the needle? And I made that spreadsheet for myself as a way to be really honest and not be able to hide and say, well, I'm going to set this goal, but then I'm not going to track it. Again, I used to create tools like this or spreadsheets like this, and I would be in a lot of judgment and self-blame if I didn't do everything on there. That's not the energy here, but I want you to start looking at, what are the actions I would be taking and habits I would be taking from the end if I did have my goals accomplished? And then how can I start doing at least one of those things today? Maybe you want to make a habit tracker that you're going to work out 4 times a week. Maybe you realize, you know what, getting on certain stages would really grow my brand and my business, so I'm going to pitch myself for 5 or 10 a week. Start tracking that, but the key is you have to actually do it. And when you, again, treat yourself as your own very best client, when you treat yourself as your own best asset and you make that decision to keep your promises to yourself, that's when that self-trust compounds. And one day you wake up and you realize maybe you were someone who 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, you didn't trust yourself, but you've reestablished that relationship. You know that you can listen to yourself deeply. And that is the key to truly quantum leaping. So I hope that this episode served you. I want to hear from you. I'm at Elyse Archer on all social media. I'd love for you to tag me, share what resonated most with you in this episode. And I want to remind you as we close out to remember to trust yourself on your path to success. Your desires are green lights, leading you and everyone around you to a brighter future. I'll see you on the next episode.